Tonight, major changes are already underway after 13 investigates uncovered a sexual misconduct scandal. A former Florence city manager is at the center of it all. Mike Patterson stands accused of harassing multiple employees while on the job at City Hall. 3 of his accusers have agreed to share their stories about a system they say failed them and empowered their perpetrator. We do want to warn you, the content of this report is sexually explicit in nature, but we feel it is appropriate to accurately reflect the gravity of the accusations. Chief Investigative Reporter Chelsea Brentzel has this 13 Investigate special report, Position of Power.
Tammy Kibler became Florence's city clerk and human resource director in February 2019. She had only been on the job 5 days at City Hall when she says she received the first inappropriate text message from her new boss, city manager Mike Patterson.
How do I reply? What do I do to keep my job? So I would kind of laugh it off and change the subject in most cases.
Tammy agreed for us to use her name and voice, but asked us not to show her face while sharing her story. 13 Investigates reviewed some of the text messages Tammy received. In them, Patterson references Tammy's body.
Talking about having intercourse with him and his wife. There were a lot of text messages. It was daily. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. It was weekends. It was during the day, during meetings. It was all day, every day.
Tammy says she became physically ill from the stress. She broke out in hives, lost 65 pounds within months. Because Tammy was reporting the city manager, she tells 13 Investigates she took her concerns in person to Mayor Keith Orr 4 months after the inappropriate messages began. According to Tammy, he told her he couldn't do anything in June because his term was up in November. Tammy reported the harassment to the mayor on a Friday. 4 days later, the city manager she accused called her into his office. He handed her this termination letter, stating in part, despite training efforts on behalf of the city, you are unwilling or unable to perform the duties of the position in a satisfactory manner. Tammy contacted attorney Andrew Swan, who sent a letter to the city of Florence the next day, alleging wrongful termination and sex-based discrimination. 13 Investigates requested a copy of Tammy's employment disciplinary records with the city of Florence. The city told us the only record it had was Tammy's termination letter.
It wasn't about the money, it was about getting rid of Patterson. We were told that within 6 months, Patterson had to go. And that's when I was willing to settle.
In 2019, the city of Florence was operating under its 1995 employee handbook. 13 Investigates obtained a copy of the sexual harassment policy, which was updated in 2006. The policy said sexual harassment will not be tolerated. The handbook also directs employees to report to their supervisors or the city manager. But 13 Investigates found the city manager was not actually required to follow the same rules as his employees. Mike Patterson's employment contract with the city says, the City of Florence policy manual shall not apply to manager except as specifically provided in this agreement. 13 Investigates reviewed the employment agreement. The contract never mentions sexual harassment policies. Councilman Alan Nisley says he first learned of Tammy's claim during an emergency executive session in 2019, months after Tammy's departure. Nisley confirmed to 13 Investigates over text that the city's insurance provider at the time recommended Patterson's firing. The city of Florence says it has no settlement or non-disclosure records related to the case.
And I was really surprised when I looked in there to find that Mayor Orr had actually received a package that had far more information than we were aware of at council or ever made aware of.
Councilman Mike Vendetti was on council at the time, but says he first learned from 13 Investigates this month of the text messages Patterson had sent Tammy in 2019.
There was actual hard evidence that this behavior was going on, which we didn't see or I didn't see. And it would have changed things quite a bit as probably how I would have reacted myself, because it would have made it far easier to, say, remove Mr. Patterson.
Vendetti and current Mayor Paul Villagrana both say they were unaware of a recommendation to fire Patterson in 2019. The settlement agreement did not have a written provision specifying that Patterson be removed from his leadership position. 8 days before Tammy's suit was officially settled, and 5 months after the city received a legal notice from her attorney, the council made another set of decisions. They did not decide to fire Patterson, but instead decided to provide him a new set of benefits. The 2019 council approved a nearly $4,700 raise for Patterson, boosting his annual salary to more than $96,000. They also granted him a water credit for his personal home worth $2,500 a year. Finally, regarding the idea of terminating Patterson, the city council promised Patterson a 6-month salary severance package in the event he was fired.
I did what I could.
As for Tammy, it would take her 2 years to find another job. Soon after, she received an unexpected message from a Florence City employee in distress.
It was painful when she called me and said it was still happening, right? I thought maybe if they didn't let him go, maybe he learned his lesson, but apparently he didn't. It didn't faze him.
Shay Ardrey's experience was similar to Tammy's. One day after Shay started working as a Florence City planning technician, she says she started receiving messages from Patterson.
They started out like very friendly, flirtatious. You look beautiful this morning, or you have such pretty eyes.
Then the messages became sexual.
Second week, they elevated to more of, I want to lick you. They became rather inappropriate rather quickly.
13 Investigates reviewed those messages, including Shay's response to Patterson. Stop it.
Difficult? How many ways can you tell somebody you're not interested without being offensive?
Then Shay's boss asked her if she would be interested in having sex.
And then ultimately asking me if I would have a threesome with him and his wife.
Shay tells 13 Investigates she first told her supervisor, then City Planning Director Sean Garrett, in early July 2021 about the harassment.
I offered to show him, and he read just a couple of messages and couldn't read anymore. So then we started talking about what to do and who to tell. And I had a lot of anxiety about going to the mayor or to city council because I had been talking with staff and I had learned about some of the women before me, including Tammy. And I knew when she reported it to the mayor, she got fired. So I didn't want to lose my job.
A few weeks later, on August 25th, 2021, at 3:57 in the morning, Shay submitted her resignation letter. Her resignation would soon lead to action from the city council. After Shay sent screenshots of the inappropriate messages, the council put Patterson on administrative leave on August 27, 2021. 4 days later, the council unanimously voted to fire Patterson without paying his $48,000 severance. At the time, they didn't tell the public why. The next morning, the current city clerk, Jessica Hill, walked over to the Florence Police Department, yards away from City Hall. Jessica told a detective that Patterson had recently sexually assaulted her in his office, according to police records.
When we got to the door, he came up behind me and he closed the door. And I turned around like, "What are you doing?" And he put his hands on both sides of me and kissed me and stuck his hand on my pants.
She also told them about the harassing text messages she received from Patterson, asking her to have sex with him and his wife. Police directed Jessica to conduct recorded phone calls with Patterson. 2 calls between Jessica and Patterson were recorded with police equipment, according to police records reviewed by 13 Investigates. Jessica described what happened in the second call.
He goes, "I thought that we were on the same page." And I said, "Mike, you're my boss. What am I supposed to do?" And he goes, "Well, you're not going to charge me with sexual assault, are you?" So he admitted he knew what he did was completely wrong and against the law in a recorded phone call.
After more than 24 interviews and conversations with current and former employees, the Florence Police Department secured an arrest warrant for Patterson. He was arrested at the Denver International Airport 12 days later on November 15, 2021, charged with stalking, sexual contact, no consent, and providing alcohol to a minor. All of the charges are related to his behavior with women he supervised. But charges were never filed on Jessica's behalf. In early February, Florence Police Chief Shane Prickett told 13 Investigates Jessica was eliminated as a victim through evidence in the criminal investigation, but didn't say why.
It makes me very angry. I don't understand how a recorded phone call with the person who assaulted you admitting that they assaulted you eliminates you as a victim.
Both Jessica and Shay have filed federal lawsuits against the city of Florence and Patterson, seeking an unspecified amount of monetary damages.
Very few cases keep me up at night. This is one of them. And it's not just because Michael Patterson did unspeakable, immoral, illegal things. That's part of it. But it's that time after time after time, he was enabled by the highest echelons of the city of Florence government.
Their attorney, Andrew Swan, says the thread that runs through the story about Florence is a lack of truthfulness from the city.
Transparency is vital in any governmental organization. And as this case and these cases continue, I'm struck at how little transparency there has been. And citizens of Florence need to know that transparency is what we're going to get for them.
On February 11th, 13 Investigates reached out to all of the current city council members, telling them the women we interviewed wanted a public apology because they felt ignored, degraded, and not believed. 11 days later, a stunning change of tune in a public statement from Councilman Brian Allen.
This evil was a very dominant trait within our city for many years. That is, until the women that were being victimized by these shameful acts stood up and said no more. It took some very strong women to finally end his reign of terror. I commend their strength in coming forward and bringing that darkness into light. It was overdue, and to those women I can only deeply and sincerely apologize.
Following a hearing earlier this month, we attempted to get answers from the decade-long former Florence city manager.
Is there anything that you want to say about the crimes that you're charged with? Is there anything that you want to say to the women that have accused you?
His attorney also did not respond to our request for comment on our investigation. The women say more than anything, they want accountability, systems to be put in place to prevent what they experienced from happening again, and acknowledgement of what transpired.
They've allowed many, many women, and we're talking a lot of women, to be hurt because of their decision.
I would like to see the people that are, in my eyes, just as responsible as Patterson step down and not be in that position of power anymore.
Resignations.
The city could have stopped him, but they didn't. They gave him raises. They gave him hidden perks. And you know what they also did? At his request, they put blinds on his inner office window. A reasonable employer would have fired him. City of Florence allowed him to keep covering it up.
Weeks before our report, the interim city manager decided to step down. The council then appointed another temporary manager. We've learned his first order of business was to remove the blinds from the city manager's office. 13 Investigates has been investigating the story for the last 3 months. You can find much more of what we uncovered in our extensive online article right now on KRDO.com. Reporting at Florence City Hall, Chelsea Brensel, 13 Investigates.